Hey everybody, welcome back to part 4 of Where Are the Children? Thank you for joining me. Now this episode was extremely difficult. Anytime I do a video on CPS is very difficult because it is just hard on your soul to watch organizations that whose sole purpose is to protect the kids who don't have adults to speak for them. It's just like it's so hard to see that very system take advantage of these kids, and that's exactly what they've been doing all over the country, not just in Texas, all over the country, but Texas is very they're like the poster child for like crappy CPS services. They really are like the poster child. I mean, like I've said before, they kind of make Riverside look like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. They really do. They really there's something. And I know it seems like a lot of people or the last few episodes like I've talked about on this series. I know I've focused a lot on the Democrats that are behind it. But it's not just them. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a Republican, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who has also made it extremely easy for this to continue. And this horrible, these crimes against children to perpetuate. And I'll explain a little bit why later. But yeah, this isn't my picture. I'm trying to draw my own picture of the cave actually. It hasn't turned out as quite as good as this one, but I'm trying. Okay, let's start with the federally funded Southwest Key programs. Now, this is like a facility, maybe multiple facilities that house minor migrant children, the ones who unaccompanied, the ones who don't have adults with them. And as far as I check, they're still up and running. As of the other day, when I looked up their website. And it's odd to me, given like the multiple complaints and lawsuits against Southwest Key. It's quite astonishing. It's pretty much like a government trap house for pedophiles. Let's continue a little bit more about Southwest Key's one of them. There's another one in Bastrop. Like there's quite a few of them that are like this, where they'll house like unaccompanied migrant children, and then the staff there takes advantage of these children. Let's read a little bit. The largest housing provider, Southwest Key is the largest, of unaccompanied children, received more than $2.5 billion in taxpayer funding over the past 3 years. This summer, the federal government sued Southwest Key, alleging that employees engaged in a pattern of sexual abuse and harassment against the children in its shelters and failed to take sufficient action to protect the children in its care. And hopefully, programs like this are the reason why Donald Trump and Elon Musk are like really digging into the books. I mean, I'm hoping. Surely they've got to find something. I know that none of these, what they find is going to outright say, so and so. But I don't know. Some of the ones that I saw on the Doge post on Twitter, the titles looked a little suspicious to me. Like one of them was women in or what was it? Something about funding for climate change and women. Like, I don't know. It just seemed a little strange. Like, some of these titles are very strange. They're very strange. I'm curious to know exactly what they were for. But anywho. So, There's been a lot of mainstream media try to say, oh, it's not actually 300 something thousand missing children. It's actually only 32,000 who didn't show up for their court date. But what they failed to say, yeah, true. It was only 32,000 that failed to show up. However, what they didn't say was the other 290,000 missing children never even got a court date to begin with. So it's not that the other hundreds and hundreds of thousands aren't missing. It's that they never even got a court date. So they're like untraceable. These 32,000 are the only ones who got a court date. I mean, it's just astonishing. It really is. It's just wild. So yeah, here we go. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Over 290,000 have been released by HHS without a notice to appear for an immigration court date. There is no way for ICE to monitor the location and status of these migrant children or verify their safety. We've asked and even subpoenaed HHS for information about the screening potential of sponsors and the children that they've lost contact with. What is happening to these migrant children? That's what I'd like to know. What's happening to them? What's happening to them? Since y'all talked about how you cared so much about all these children and these people more than you did your own citizens, well, where the hell are they? Why does it seem like they're the ones who suffer the most from your policies? I know us Americans like to complain like it's hurting us, but can we stop for a minute and think about how much it's actually hurting the families of the people coming over the border, losing their children, or the kids that were kidnapped from families taken to the border? No one wants to talk about that. The federal government is facilitating this humanitarian catastrophe. Yeah, you can say that again. The unaccompanied children are released from the HHS shelters right into the hands of these sponsors, despite multiple warnings from staffers within the agency that the vetting process was failing to protect the children. They had so many whistleblowers. They've had so many whistleblowers. And it's so messed up because there was a woman who was sitting there trying to, fight this, trying to do a better way for these children. And then they told her to resign. Like, it's wild. It's wild. Like, I mean, I think for myself, before I was even real privy to the true problem this was becoming, even I could see that, like, the United States was slowly trying to, sexualize teenagers. First, they were sexualizing teenagers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, with those weird shows like Monster High, where, all their body parts were hanging out and stuff like that. And then, it got even weirder. Like, in the last 5 years or so, they've really, really been pushing to try to, normalize, or sexualize children even younger than that. Like, with those Harajuku dolls. Just go look up Harajuku dolls. Click on Google Images, and you will see what I mean. It's appalling. It's like they're trying to sexualize toddlers. So, this was in June 2024. The DFPS is the Texas CPS. That's just what they call their CPS. Reports 386 children trafficked while in conservatorship last year. Those are just the kids they know about. Keep in mind, they have thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of missing ones that they don't even know about. Don't even know where they are, if they're alive or dead or anything. And they wanted to find out, why kids were constantly running away from their facilities, from their placements. And the statistics say that 13% it was because of anger at the CPS system, another 13% because of the dislike of roles and placement, 8% because of frustration with caregivers, and 7% because of a desire for new placement. And those were just some of the reasons. And this woman, Judge Janice Jack, is about the only person in Texas on a federal level who has been fighting for accountability for CPS. She's been fighting over a decade for accountability. And you know how you know what they did to her? Just a couple months ago. They took her off the case because they said she was being too adversarial. Oh, don't worry. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let's read a little bit. Okay. When U.S. District Judge Janice Graham Jack declared in 2015 that Texas foster kids were leaving state care more damaged than when they entered, it forced the state to confront decades of missteps. After a year-long trial for the lawsuit, which was filed in 2011, the Corpus Christi judge found Texas was violating the constitutional rights of foster children by exposing them to an unreasonable risk of harm. Caseworkers were carrying more than double the standard for caseload limits. Children were being placed far from their home counties, and the state was not enforcing residential facilities' compliance with licensing standards. Texas's foster care system is broken and has been that way for decades, the judge wrote in a 260-page ruling that landed like a bomb. Which was the ruling that probably got her off the case. All the while, Texas's children have been shuttled throughout a system where rape, abuse, and psychotropic medication and instability are the norm, according to Judge Jack. She put the foster care system under federal oversight and has spent more than 7 years issuing order after order. Hire more caseworkers. Stop placing children in unsafe settings. Track child-on-child abuse. She appointed special masters, also called court monitors, to track the state's compliance. When it comes to the foster care reform in Texas, the federal judge is holding most, if not all, of the cards. Her court hearings seeking progress updates on her orders have commanded political attention, pressuring the Department of Family and Protective Services and state lawmakers to fix the concerns Jack has raised. Initially, Texas's top leaders resisted her demands. What is there to resist? Why don't you want to protect these children? What is there to resist? But after years of federal oversight, the state's child welfare agency has started to implement the court-ordered reforms. Yeah, they did at first. Jack, 76, has twice held the state in contempt of court for failing to make progress on her orders. She threatened to hold the state in contempt of court again in January. At a 2020 court hearing, she said grocery chain HEB did a better job of tracking produce than Texas does tracking foster kids. Oh my God, she makes a really good point. There. Like grocery chains or like any like really retail chain is like on it when it comes to tracking their stuff, their product. CPS has like one job to protect these kids and they can't even keep track of them. Much of her ire over the years has been focused on how the CPS has tried to handle a capacity crisis. There is a high number of children with severe mental health and behavioral needs, but not enough licensed facilities or foster families trained to properly care for them. You know, in my opinion, you know how like for court trials and stuff, they like get a random pool of jurors? Well, when they're investigating these CPS cases, well, like in my opinion, I feel like that's what they should do. Like, I mean, just because, like, these are our tax dollars paying to take care of these kids who have no one else to take care of them. So, I mean, like, I think some of, like, the federal government's issues could be solved by, like, oversight by the citizens. Not oversight by the same federal government, but oversight by the ones who are actually paying the bill. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know what anyone else thinks about that, but it could be a solution. It would be a lot harder for corrupt people to put these kids in horrible positions if they did that. If they got a random pool of, like, jurors. I mean, I don't know. It's just a thought. But yeah, and this article was about back in 2022. This was about another place called The Refuge, and it was in Bastrop. Another place that was receiving funding to care for these kids. Another place that was also had staff and employees taking advantage of these kids too. And this is what Judge Jatt has been dealing with for over a decade. Is what she's been dealing. So, I mean, no wonder after a decade, she's getting a little frustrated. Because can you call it adversarial? I think it's adversarial that the state is completely undermining her authority. Why isn't that adversarial? But yeah, so they end up removing her. Back this last fall, they ended up removing her from the whole case. Even after, like, all these articles were coming out about the horrible things that these Texas foster kids were going through. 4 months after a 3-judge panel on the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals removed federal Judge Janice Jatt from a major years-long case against Texas foster care system and vacated her... Yeah, and this was another thing. Not only they removed her, they got rid of her commands, of her... Yeah, they got rid of her orders against the state. How is this not... This is terrible. And I got that 260-page report. I'll link it in the description if you guys want to read it yourself. That was from Judge Janice Jatt. And in my opinion, I think that report was the reason that they took her off the case. That's my opinion. Well, there was 4 other judges who came to defend Judge Janice Jatt. And him and his colleagues wrote that this decision to get rid of her from this case, that this will cause abuse and neglect to be out of sight of the law once more. Tuesday's decision denies the plaintiff's appeal of the 3-judge panel's unanimous ruling. Yeah, so they denied that. They wouldn't let her back on the case. And this is where it gets infuriating, okay? Governor Greg Abbott, oh yeah, the Republican, that one. Okay. He requested for the case to be reassigned to a new judge, the governor of Texas. But here's where the tricky part comes in. He was a defendant in the case. Yeah. He was a defendant in the case. Ain't that funny? That not only they remove her from the case by his request, he was also a defendant in it, but then they strike down her fines against the state of Texas. Why, Greg Abbott? Was it taking it out of your bottom line? Was she making your life difficult? Making you look bad? Making you look incompetent? Well, being that your state has, like, the worst CPS, in my opinion, in the country, maybe only Arizona and New Mexico come close to it, you would think that you would want to follow through and help these kids. Where's your solution, Greg Abbott? Why aren't you talking about it? Because the problem's only gotten worse. Yeah. This guy. Mr. Republican. So yeah, it's not just the Democrats. This is just the Fox News. Listen. Fox News ain't all that better than CNN. I'm sorry, they're not. They're not. Because they're sitting there trying to defend what Trump and Elon Musk is doing. And in my opinion, it would be very easy. They're sitting there arguing about all these things that people have been arguing about for decades. That, you know what I mean? Like, they're arguing about... Really, the argument's very simple in this case, in this particular election. Okay? And it's nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. The argument's very simple. All you got to do, Fox News, if you want to defend the current administration or thrash the previous one, then talk about all the kids they lost track of. It's funny whenever you show clips of Tom Holland like giving speeches and stuff, that as soon as he mentions human trafficking, it cuts off. So yeah, I don't trust Fox News either, and I don't recommend you trust them either. I mean, do what you want, but like they haven't. They can pat themselves on the back all they want, but they haven't done anything to help any of these kids either. Just saying. And now I just wanted to like leave off with this. Like, I understand that a judge is supposed to see both sides. I understand that. And in my opinion, if a judge has been seeing the same case for over a decade, and there's literally been no changes implemented, and the problem is just consistently getting worse, then how can we call it adversarial when she is demanding answers, when she is demanding accountability? This is her job. Like, what do you... Can you imagine some of the pictures she's probably seen? Or some of the children that have come before her absolutely traumatized and ruined and broken? Can you imagine? And for this governor, like all their fines against the state of Texas got dropped. Her demands got dropped, taken away. And I have yet to see where they've continued this case at all or implemented any change, whether it be hers or their own. But if you look at the headlines, it's just getting worse. More people are coming out. There was a couple who came out who just got their baby back a couple weeks ago. Oh my God, this was so sad. This made me cry. It was a woman. She had just given birth just weeks before, and it was a traumatic birth. They had to do an emergency C-section and everything. And then a few weeks later, her baby is like coughing, or I don't know, and she felt like she had to take the baby to the hospital. But she made the mistake of going to a hospital other than the one she gave birth at. And this hospital did x-rays and MRIs. And they saw like where the baby's rib was a little fractured, and apparently there was a little brain bleed. But keep in mind that this was like right after she gave birth. Okay? And the reason she ended up getting and they took her baby away from her for like a whole year without even inquiring the reasons like about the traumatic birth or any other circumstances. They just assumed it was abuse and took their baby for like a year. A whole year. And wouldn't even let them come see their baby without supervision. And come to find out that the injuries this baby had, the chances of a baby getting these injuries from abuse was like 0.001%. And the chances for the baby to get those injuries from birth were like much, much higher. And they're saying they didn't even consider that. So yeah, they gave the baby right back to her. And you know what was sad? This baby was walking by the time they got their baby back. That made me cry. It's like, so that couple missed that whole first year of their baby's life. Man. That's so disgusting. And then you've got other kids who are dying that you refuse to take from. Like, there is a problem. There is a problem. When CPS can't distinguish, when they can't distinguish whether a parent just needs help or a parent needs to go to jail. They apparently can't tell the difference. And I'm not saying that can be an easy job, but that's why I think a jury would work better in investigations like that than like one person filling out a report, going back to the job, and then giving that report to that person's boss. I don't know. I think we need a better system than that. And I think Judge Janice Jack does too. And I just want to take a moment to thank Judge Janice Jack for fighting for those kids, for risking her job for fighting for those kids. And these people don't get thanked enough. They lose everything trying to fight for kids that aren't even theirs. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank her for this. Because these kids need someone to fight for them. They need someone to fight for them, guys. And that's why my next episode is going to be a real heart-wrencher. It's going to be about Anthony Fauci and Mayorkas. Alejandro Mayorkas. And it's not pretty. It's not going to be an easy episode to do, so I hope you guys come back and watch it. It's very draining to talk about evil people. It drains the life out of you to talk about them. God, they're so evil. But anyways, gotta go. Have a good day. I'll be back for part 6.